So I do come from Ohio University. I direct the English Language Improvement Program there. And as mentioned, I have over 15 years experience working in ESL, EFL, and teacher training. I like to show a picture of my beautiful Ohio University. It looks so pretty and green here. However, maybe many of you have heard about the weather activity we've had in the US lately. So in fact, these days, the picture looks a lot more like this. I've been fortunate to escape this terrible weather, however, being here in lovely India for a few weeks, working, looking at curricula, looking at materials, teacher training, talking with students, meeting with students as well, which has given me a much better understanding of the context that you have here. So what I'll be talking about today is this pedagogy of collaboration within a technology landscape. I'll start by briefly going over some of the need that we have here, and then go over 10 specific guidelines that you can use and apply to technology decisions you make in your specific context. Keeping in mind, we're talking about technology that is interactive and technology for collaboration and communication. So today's realities, of course, in addition to needing English increasingly for communication and collaboration skills, we also have an increasingly integrated and interconnected world. And on top of that, our students really are demanded to have much more digital literacy than we required from students in the past. And we'll be talking more about digital literacy a little bit later. But together, that means that students come to our classes with evolving expectations about what we can offer them in terms of learning. So that brings us to many opportunities, right? So we have realities and we have opportunities. One opportunity is the increased motivation and creativity that now students can partake of and we can enjoy as well in the classroom. And we have new roles for teachers and for students. For teachers, we need teachers who are more engaged with students, making sure that the teacher is a facilitator and a guide, helping students become active learners who are self-directed, making decisions about their learning. And of course, many teachers, many students need extra support from teachers as they learn this new role and become more comfortable. This brings us to a wonderful opportunity for collaborative learning, which is what we'll be looking at today. So the question is, do we need that here? Do we need that in India? Do we need these technologies? Do we need these opportunities for collaboration, these new roles for teachers and students? If you look at many of the documents that have come out lately, for instance, the British Council announced that in fact there is a need, there's concern that there won't be the IT specialists with the English communication skills that they need in order to compete and continue to grow the numbers that are expected to be needed here in India. Part of this need rests on the asymmetric proficiency skills of students from one skill area to another, maybe better readers and writers than they are listeners and speakers. Also, businesses are calling for increased demand for employability skills, communication skills, collaboration skills, all in English. The British Council also notes that we need teachers who take on this new role, who use technology, appropriately. There's increased opportunities for interaction from teachers so that students can engage in deeper and more meaningful learning within the classroom. One way we can do this is through group learning tasks. So setting up group tasks, which is what we'll be talking about today. And a friend of mine that I made here in the country, she spoke last year at TEC14, Sai Lakshmi, and she noted that this context, the Indian educational system, needs more and more collaborative, cooperative learning opportunities instead of the competitive atmosphere within the classroom that has frequently been found. The role of technology that we have here is one where we want students to be not just consumers of technology, but producers of technology, producers of content. It used to be technology required that students maybe read some stuff, take a quick little quiz, see if they got the answer correct or incorrect. We're not talking about that type of technology so much, but rather ways that we can collaborate with technology, have more student-directed learning in the classroom. And finally, about technology, it needs to be integrated into the curriculum. It won't work very well if it's a separate add-on that someone just smacked on because we need more technology around here, but rather that the activities that we choose really take advantage of the opportunities that technology now offers us. So that means we basically need tasks that allow for self-expression, creativity, motivation, challenging, critical thinking, independent learners who feel empowered and feel encouraged to look for information outside of the textbook. And that really requires further teacher development, further teacher training, and flexibility. Okay, so let's talk about these 10 guidelines for this pedagogy of collaboration within a technology landscape. I should make a couple caveats here first. At the end of the presentation, I'll show you a website where you can download, where I've uploaded this PowerPoint. So you can go there and you can download it. Feel free to take notes now if you want, but it will also be available online. And also to say a word about collaboration here, the term collaboration. You know, you could think of things like teamwork or group work. I'm using the term collaboration to mean something beyond just people working together. Maybe we've all experienced teamwork where it happened that there was a project, everybody got together, talked about how they would divide the project up. You do one thing, I'll do one thing. We come together, we slam it together as fast as possible. Maybe we don't read the other students' parts and just turn it in. Okay, that's a team project, but we're looking for more than that, where students collaborate for a shared goal as they work on their projects. So the first question is, what will your technology landscape be? Okay, so I've got a top picture here where everything is so beautiful. It's all dreamy, dreamy land. Technology will solve all of our problems. There's no problem technology can't solve. Or perhaps more like the bottom picture, where there's fears that technology is causing people not to communicate as much, become isolated. Maybe fears that as you bring technology into your classroom, perhaps you're concerned that you're going to be losing too much control, or the technology won't work, or students won't respond in the way that you had hoped. Okay, so I would suggest these are both, possible concerns, but it's not going to be one, it's not going to be the other. The technology landscape that I would like to think about today is one that really puts learners at the center. So here we've got the learners at the center, we've got a road, and the basis is certainly the technology, but that's going to change. The software will change, the hardware, all the apps and everything else will change. But what won't change are some guiding principles that we can use in our context, always putting learners at the center. So that combines it all together, right? We've got our collaboration, our new roles for students and teachers, and our technology. And together, that's the spot that we're looking at today. So the first guideline in this framework is to allow your teaching to evolve as technology evolves. So this is a publication that I did with Greg Kessler at Ohio University. And in the middle, you can see a collaborative, autonomous language learner. So this is a learner who has their autonomous, meaning this learner has goals, has a certain objectives they're working toward. They're thinking about how they're going to accomplish those goals. But at the same time, it's kind of a tension because there's a group, and everybody in the group also has their goals, right? So we've got individual goals, but working together for a joined goal. So we're interested in how students navigate this type of tension. So, of course, at the top there, you can see the evolving collaborating tool. So the tools that we use to collaborate are constantly evolving, so that adds another layer of complexity. On the corner there, you can see collaborative use of those tools also is going to be constantly changing, so that adds a layer of complexity. But the part we're focusing on today is really how pedagogical practice can evolve as well, and taking this as an opportunity for your own professional development. If you're looking for a way to start, that isn't too challenging, you might look at word clouds. I listed a number of websites here that you can look at. A word cloud is where you take a bunch of text, dump it into a free online tool. This one's Wordle. Dump it in there. Words that have a higher frequency count are made in larger font size, and words that have a lower frequency count are in a smaller font size. And then that's it. That's what you get. So you can see here, I created a word cloud with immersive and engaging, more frequently inserted. So what could you do with this kind of thing in a collaborative environment? One idea you could do is to have students do an online discussion. Okay? They could do separate online group discussions in their small groups. And if you want students to reflect on their own discussion, reflection, of course, is a crucial part. Take their discussion, put it into a word cloud, and then let them see the words that were more prominent within their discussion and the ones that were less prominent. Have them analyze that for specific things, whether it be vocabulary you're working on, Maybe you're working on more academic versus informal vocabulary, something like that. The main ideas that they were trying to convey, did those come through most likely? Another idea is that you can have students, give students a Wordle or a word cloud and let them try to identify or guess what the key terms were that you put in for a Google search. So here's an example, all right? So that's my question for you. I put a Google search in. What search terms do you think I included in order to get this word cloud? Probably English education in India, right? So that's what we did for this one. Another type of technology you might want to try to use is polling software. Okay, so Socrative is one free online polling software tool, but there are others to choose from. And with this, a teacher creates a quiz, and you need to do this within a classroom environment where everyone is hooked up online some way or another. Students can be on laptops or smartphones or tablets or whatever, as long as they're hooked up to the internet. So students answer the question, and then the answers are displayed immediately on the screen as a graph for everyone to see. So how might you use this in your class? Well, for instance, you could try to get some conversation going with this one. Ask students questions that they're interested in regarding opinions. So ask them where you think some of the students might choose one answer and some of the students might choose another answer. Let them go ahead and make their choice. Let the class see together the graph that is created. And then have students get into their groups according to the answers they gave, and have them discuss and try to predict why the other people in class gave a different answer. What were they thinking? What were the reasons behind their choice? And then have the groups get together, either one-on-one or small groups, and discuss with people from the other group about the choices they made and see if their predictions came through. A large part of using technology now is really encouraging reflective and critical thinking. Maybe you've used Google Docs and Google Hangouts. Google Docs is freely available, and if you add a Google Plus account, then you can add Google Hangouts. With Google Docs, 2 or 3 or several users can be on at the same time, looking at the same document, and whenever one change is made, then immediately everyone who is on that document at the same time can see the change. You can add the video feature if you go into Google Hangouts. Students or teacher can go into the revision history, so you can see on the side, so they can see past versions of the text they created. That's great for you as a teacher. So for accessibility, assessing students and accountability, making sure students are accountable. It's also useful for students because at any time they can go back and they can see who made what changes. Maybe they want to revert back to a previous draft, and they can do that easily as well. And teachers can leave comments as well. So what can you do with this kind of thing? In our program, we've been using in-class collaborative writing, and we put it across our curriculum. What we found on a research study I did with one of my graduate students was that students who did in-class collaborative writing using Google Docs, comparing those students who did in-class writing but independently, also using Google Docs, the students who engaged in the collaborative in-class writing had individual writing scores that were higher, statistically significantly, than the other group of students. So these students, all the students wrote the same amount, but the students who engaged in the collaborative in-class writing had greater personal gains to their writing. So as a result, we put that across the curriculum. I'll be talking a little bit later about some kind of guidelines you might want to think if you want to plan a project like that. Also, I'll be happy to talk to anybody on the side if you're interested on specifics. PiratePad is another one, similar to Google Docs, but with this one, it's very easy to share the document. You just send the URL to someone, and they don't need to, for instance, register in any way for it, and it has many of the same features as Google Docs has. You might also be interested in having students create some material as well. So one possibility is a reflexive photography project. This is something we do at Ohio University. My colleague Lara Wallace has developed this. So we have a course where students need to pass a speaking assessment in order to become teaching assistants. They need to be building their English oral skills. So the students, they have a great need that they need to pass this test, but they also have many needs that they do for the ways they might modify their speaking. The students identify through photography what their needs are for their speaking to change. They identify any things that might be keeping them from meeting those needs, and then ways they can overcome those barriers, and then ultimately, hopefully, pass the test. So students are asked to take pictures representing all these areas. Then they're put into small groups. And these small groups, I was fortunate enough to, I've been able to watch some of these activities. The groups get together and they offer each other fantastic recommendations and encouragement on things that have helped them with their own speaking development, working together to solve their own problems. You could use any type of technology. We use PowerPoint for this. It's nice on smaller tablet devices because it creates a more intimate conversation. But you could certainly use videos or many other things as well. So the second guideline here is to have students collaborate in a variety of ways using different technologies. If your students have more of a low-tech variety, they're still using feature phones. A great app, which you can access here at binu.com, AE from American English, allows students to play games, access audio recordings and ebooks and things like this. You can start out by having your students work in small groups with these apps and experience what it's like to try to think about how to notice their own and monitor their own learning. Ask them specifically on goals that they have that they'd like to work on. And then when they're working in their groups, they should try to discuss their answers first before just clicking. An important part of learner training with students with technology is thinking through. Maybe you have noticed this. Many people, when they get in front of a computer, they just start clicking stuff instead of thinking carefully about the answers that they're choosing. Padlet is a really nice resource. If you're familiar with Pinterest, Padlet is similar. It's a big empty board, and students or teachers can add content to it. This is a sample one, but when you first look at it, there's nothing there. You easily create an account. I like to use it with my students by uploading some videos, or you can just embed a link to a video that maybe you have on YouTube or that you found somewhere else. And then ask students to watch the video and then leave discussion notes there. They're little stickies. These are all little stickies. Very easy for students to double-click, leave a sticky. They can have a conversation right there. For me, it works better. It facilitates better communication than when I ask my students for a more traditional discussion board, because all of the conversation is right there for everyone to see. Other types of things you can do with mobile devices. If you're familiar with Diigo, you can access Diigo just online anywhere. You don't need a specific device, but then you can also download apps and things if you do want it on a specific device. Diigo is a bookmarking tool, and also you can create groups. So if you, for instance, have a group of students that is working on a project and they need to find certain information online, access information, they can share that together, and then any highlighting or notes that they take can be shared with all the members of that group. You just have to register for that. It's free. Subtext is an iPad app that allows teachers to embed instruction within the digital text for students. So as students are reading in the text, there's instruction right there in the document. So the third guideline is to harness the power of technologies that encourage communication and increase learner motivation and reflective thinking of the use of their technology and their collaborative work. Digital storytelling is a popular one, where students can create short and engaging multimedia stories that can be about personal stories, cultural figure stories. You could ask students, for instance, to take a book or a story they've read and create a new ending for the story, or to tell the story from a different character's point of view, put the story in a different time period. You can imagine there's a lot of ways you could do this, travel plans and things like that. You can use a lot of different types of technology. They can be audio-based, like Audacity is a free program for that, VoiceThread for video. You can also, Animoto is a nice one if you haven't seen that. You dump your pictures and video clips in there, and pick a template, and it produces a nice product for you. Another one is Comic Life, if you haven't seen this one. So with this one, it helps students basically create a comic book or a graphic novel. They choose the pictures they want to dump in, they choose the template that they have, dump their pictures in there, and it produces basically a graphic novel or comic book. And that's nice especially for students who are at a lower English proficiency level. Another idea is digital journaling for reflection. Penzu.com is a nice one. Certainly you could ask your students to do handwritten journals in a book, but with something like Penzu, it does offer a number of opportunities. You can add pictures straight in here very easily. As students are clicking pictures with their phones, it can go, put easily into their online diary. Also, different things with coloring and moving things around. Students can be encouraged to just write this on their own, or they can share it maybe with just a teacher or with their small group that they're working with. It's important that students think about the goals that they have, not just for language, as you know, but also for how they're collaborating. So they can have goals for how they want to collaborate better in the future, and they can reflect on those with something like Penzu. So the fourth guideline is to make sure that you get your students' input into how they're using technologies, what they like about technologies, things like that. So what devices do they use most frequently? What are they frustrated about when they use technology? If you use something they're going to be frustrated with, you better make sure you're working extra hard to try to win them over. How can you help? What do they do already with technology? What are their favorite features that they like to use? You can watch students as they're using technology, making sure that you're paying attention to their body language. So are they looking interactive? If they're supposed to be working in a group, are they talking? And it's really the teacher's role here to come in and guide students through that process. So if you want them to be communicating and talking and they're sitting there quietly, just like in the classroom, they need you to go over and find out what possible, maybe they've hit a brick wall about something. An important part of communicating in a collaborative way is students need that collaborative language. They need to know how to use the English to say their opinions very directly but politely. They also need the phrases that they will need in case they disagree with someone and they want to politely disagree. Phrases like, thank you, that was a really interesting point, but actually my opinion is different. They need all those pieces of language. So the fifth guideline is you want to train learners to use their new technologies effectively. And that begins with troubleshooting, because you can assume there are going to be technology problems. Okay, so that goes from if the internet doesn't work, the computers don't work, if the different applications don't work. So for instance, if you ask students to post something to a Padlet, I always tell students immediately a backup. I say, okay, but if that doesn't work, if for whatever reason you can't post it, then please give it to me in this different way. Whether that means print something and bring it to class or send it by email. So students already know what to do if something doesn't work, so they don't freak out. Learner training also involves concerns with privacy and security. So a good way to think of it is zip it, block it, flag it. Zip it, so teaching students to keep their mouth closed about certain privacy things they shouldn't be sharing with the world. Blocking anybody who might be harassing them in some way, never opening files that are from a link they're not familiar with, and flagging it, making sure students know that if they are concerned about something, that they tell someone that they can trust. This is increasingly important with all the social media now that we have. So another aspect of learner training is thinking about technologies and activities when they're new. How do we handle those new technologies for our students? It's a good idea not to grade projects when you're using a brand new technology, because the students need some time to get used to that technology. Also, have them experiment with it. Let them kind of figure out some of the features on their own. You don't have to tell them everything. Let them play with it, see if they can figure out. I've learned things from different programs that I didn't know the programs could do, just because my students figured out when they were just playing around with stuff. And then you can also engage in a cyclical approach to learner training. So first of all, you can introduce a technology and then give the students some time to play with it, try it in class, give them a project where they can use that technology. It's nice to give them a couple different options so that they could try a couple different things and they have some, they can have some flexibility with that. And then cycle it back through. Maybe next time you give them a similar project, but try it with a different technology. Or give them the same technology, but have a different project with that. So increasing learner flexibility and thinking about how different goals can be accomplished through different means. You can also move from something known to something new. So for instance, this is an example. Picture this, with the URL there, which you can find. A lot of different flashcards there where you can have students discuss things in person in small groups. So if you would, want to begin with something like this, students are more familiar with that. Start with students talking, and then you could take it one step further. This happens to be about food, a topic a lot of people like to talk about. So you might start students thinking a little more critically, like the role of food and culture and how that changes over time. How have food and holidays, for instance, changed over time, and how might that be changing in the future? I'm thinking of that because I was here over Valentine's Day, and I noticed that there was a lot of conversation about Valentine's Day here. And when I went to the restaurants, some of the restaurants included Valentine's meals and had special foods, and other ones didn't, and things like that. So that's a kind of thing that students might have an opinion on one way or the other. Academic honesty is also an important part if you're going to be thinking about learner training when it comes to technology. So at Ohio University, what we're teaching students is that if they are going to be using, of course, they will be using sources from online. And when they're writing their papers, or also when they're doing presentations, part of their final check should be an academic honesty check, a source check, where they can make sure that they haven't accidentally plagiarized anything. If you go to the website below there, you'll find a number of resources that we've uploaded where you can see more links like this, but these are a few here, like DocCop, where students can go there, they can insert their own paper they wrote, and they can run a plagiarism check on their own paper to see if there's any matching wording. We've also started a series of videos. I'll get this one started here. And the idea here is that for many students, trying to explain plagiarism to the students using words they weren't so familiar with was kind of difficult for them. So we took out the words and just are kind of showing by example behaviors they should do when they're using sources, and then behaviors they should not do. So this is an example of the Don't Do This series for the videos, where a student has gone online, the student's writing a paper, gone online to find information from a source, pastes it verbatim right into the document, does include the source information, but fails to put quotation marks. So we're telling students at the end of the video, okay, don't do this, and then we have another series where we show them exactly what they should be doing. So if you want to see the rest of those videos, you can go to the website here. It should say, yeah, don't do this. So the sixth guideline is guiding students on how to work autonomously within this collaborative environment. So I mentioned that earlier. The students have to have self-directed goals, but they're working for group goals at the same time. How can we help students with that? Well, first of all, to define what we mean by that, we mean that a person has the ability to use language independently to contribute their personal meanings to whatever the collaborative goal is. And at the same time, they have these appropriate strategies to use language communicating that point that they have. And I mentioned that language a minute ago, that they know how to do this politely and all the socio-cultural implications as well. And then that this learner has the willingness, wants to actually participate in this collaborative project. How can we use technology to develop learner autonomy? Well, students can engage with authentic texts and then work together. So for instance, maybe you're familiar with TED Talks. You can see here a clip from a TED Talk, TED.com. They have many very interesting speakers speaking on a variety of topics that are relevant today. You could, for instance, have students work in groups. Each group has a different TED Talk related to their topic. You could ask within the group one student each to write some kind of opinion survey to be distributed to classmates. And then that student would need to get that information, bring it back into the group, analyze the information, and see how that information contributes to the overall goal of the project that they're working on. You can also use discussion boards. There are a variety of them. Here are a couple ones that are freely available, the fora, forums. Students can create blogs. You as a teacher can create blogs. I find my students really enjoy that way of reading information. It's much more accessible many times to them than, for instance, reading a long article. Students, if they're going to be autonomous, also need to be able to access the information that they need, whether it's from online dictionaries. I've listed some here. Or the Wordsmith is a good one I like for synonyms if you're looking to help students, especially learn the difference between some more informal words and instead use their formal equivalents. Wordsmith is a great one for that. This bottom one, ozdic.com, is a great collocation dictionary online so that students can see not only what the meaning of a word is, but plug the word in here and they can see the other words that occur around it. And learners need help often, I mean, many of us need help often, with time management. So now there are software packages available, free, that will actually, for instance, tell a user how much time they're spending on what things online. Maybe a student thinks they're never accessing social media or looking at YouTube very much, but they might be surprised to find that, in fact, they've spent quite a bit more time on that. Or Dropbox is a great way. Students can join, the teacher can join, share files together, and then within that shared context. So coming back to the project that I did with my graduate student, this is what we found when it comes to helping students become a collaborative, autonomous language learner, that there's 3 stages. So the first stage of planning is really crucial, where the teacher is not only thinking of the linguistic needs of the student and, of course, the content needs, but if you're talking about a collaborative project, the students also need help with thinking about how they will collaborate. How will they group themselves, or will you group them? But then once they're grouped together, how will they make sure that their collaboration leads to success? You can give them options on different strategies to work together and hold conversations about that. Then in the middle section, when you're having the students do their collaborative project, as I mentioned before, you want to really be there when they need you, but not micromanaging, so it's kind of a fine balance. Students should be able to access you or other information at any time. And then for the final stage of reflection, we found that not only do students need to reflect on the way that the collaborative activity helped their personal language skills, because what we found was that some students didn't really realize that their personal, whatever writing or reading or speaking skills had improved as a result of the collaboration. So they need to reflect on that, but also reflect how their skills as collaborators have grown as well, how they can state their opinion more clearly, how they can be willing to stand up and give an opposing viewpoint or a comment that shows evaluation. So the 7th guideline is to develop real-world projects that require collaboration and also encourage shared learning. So if you have the capability, one of my favorite types of projects to do is having students work with someone in the community. That can be, and I'm calling it here generally, a client. It could be a business, some kind of small business. If you have a friend or relative who has a little business, it could be some kind of organization. It could be another group at the university or at the school. Whoever it is, look around you, match the need that you have with your students. And then the client, whoever it is, gives a project to the student groups. And then the students work together to meet those project goals. That means they might need to do some surveys. They'll probably need to find some information online, figure out which information is pertinent to their project, and then analyze that information, and then present it in a way to the client that is most useful for that client, whatever they asked for. So students then have to do all this collaborating. They need to access technology at the same time, and they need all those English skills, a variety of English skills together as well. Another type of project you can do is a shared social mapping project. With this kind of project, you can ask students to think about their own area where they live. Certainly, India has such a rich history and so many types of traditions and places and languages and different things that you could include in a mapping project. Whatever it is, have students investigate that and then embed the data within something like Google Earth, which this is a picture of, or also within mapping software such as Click to Map would work as well. A digital cultural collage is one where similarly you're having students work on exploring culture and telling stories. But then with that collage, they can create a digital representation with video interviews. Certainly, I know I've been seeing through a lot of the documents here, making sure that students are still aware of their history and their traditions and their rich past. So bringing that into the classroom through a digital cultural collage might be really motivating for your students. If you're looking for a sample, this one, myhero.com, has nice samples online. So the 8th guideline here is to provide clear expectations, but still maintaining flexibility with technology use. So in other words, you kind of giving your students some parameters, telling them clearly what you expect, but at the same time, they can make some choices. One of the first things everyone always thinks about with collaborative work is who is going to be the one who assigns the groups. Do the students pick their own groups, or will the teacher choose the groups? Sometimes, I say try them all out. But I often find that if you let students pick their own groups all the time, they just pick within their comfort zone. If you're going to help them really develop their collaborative skills, it's best if they learn to work with other people. So what we have realized through our research is that we put students into groups based on what they can offer the group. Within the writing project I mentioned, we had 4 people in a group. One person was good at writing with grammar. One person was good at writing with organization. One person could handle the technology, no problem. And then we added in this person who was good at collaborating, good at communicating. We found that if you put 3 people who were good at these other things together, writing and technology, but if none of those students had those communication and collaboration skills, then the students, the whole group didn't function as well. So we make sure each group has someone who can help the whole group kind of work together and collaborate. And then when you are working with these students, it's important for you as a teacher to provide students with that information, why you put them in those groups and what each person has to offer. So telling the student, you're put in this group because your grammar and writing skills are strong, and so please help others in your group. Of course, this only works if the collaboration atmosphere is developed in the class and it isn't one of competition. So once you have your group set up, you can decide, have conversations with students. This is part of that preparation phase I mentioned, with how they might want to accomplish their projects. One option, like A here, would be all the students can use the technology at the same time. Another option might be where you have, if you think of a traditional lab or whatever, wherever students are, that they're all sitting next to each other, but they all have their own technology device. And a third option would be if you have students who knows where in the classroom or outside of the classroom, but they're not all together. All of these options are possible, they're feasible. What we like to do is have conversations with students and tell them the options, and then let them decide how they want to do their project within that time. This way, if students try something and it doesn't work, that's okay. Let them try one of the other ones, and they're building their collaborative skills. Other things you want to consider are topic choice, certainly, and technology choice, whenever possible. Of course, they're not going to be deciding everything all the time. It's important for teachers to have, provide some guidelines, and then also decide a few things that you can allow them to choose on. So the 9th one is varying assessments of collaborative experiences. So one type of assessment you might use is e-portfolios. This would be when you ask your students to collect all of their stuff together and then put it in some digital form. That could be certainly simply putting together a PowerPoint, or if your students are a little more tech savvy, they might want to create a blog for their e-portfolio or use something like Google Sites. And then you have to decide what they'll put in it. Maybe samples of their best work. They can put their writing in there, their audio or video presentations, any artwork they have, any collaborative tests and quizzes that they've put together. So you give them, guidelines on what you want in there. Frequently, students are asked to put their best work in there and then write up a brief description on why they included what they did and what they've learned from the particular projects they're featuring. And then it's very helpful to give students a rubric. So you can give students a rubric before they start the project, and then when you grade the students, give them the completed rubric. Ruby Star here has a bunch of free rubrics to look at, and it also includes a rubric maker. So you as the teacher can come in and identify the parts that you want to focus on, the characteristics, the qualities you want to focus on for your assessment, and then how many levels, 1, 2, 3, or 4, of how good it is, and then indicate little descriptors in there, and Ruby Star has a lot of possible options you can put in, and it eventually creates a rubric for you. So the 10th guideline is prepare students to become lifelong learners of digital literacies unknown currently. So of course we hear a lot about these kinds of things, that we are preparing people for a future which we're not even sure, we don't exactly ourselves know what that is. We could choose to be kind of scared of that, or we could embrace this wonderful time we live in and help our students move forward with the critical thinking and the motivational skills that they need. So digital learning basically starts with knowing and understanding and skills. It used to be literacy was thought pretty much of reading and writing alone. And that's still, of course, a part of it. But now with digital literacy, we add all these other parts, right? So not only the functional skills, but students also need to be able to have creativity, critical thinking. They need to be able to communicate and collaborate, especially, socioculturally and interculturally communicating with all kinds of people effectively, collaborating, finding information that they want, evaluating it, maybe evaluating it for bias, potential bias, seeing if it fits their need, what they want. A lot of e-safety is here as well. So all these are components of digital literacy. One thing that we've been looking at, that I've been looking at for some of my research, and certainly is a hot topic with technology and learning, is digital game-based learning. So this game is Trace FX, which was created by the US State Department, and I was the lead author on the teacher's manual for this. So if you get a chance, you can go to this website, and if you want to download the PDF of the teacher's manual, you can see some more of these kind of ideas in there. Trace is a character who is in the future, and he gets accidentally brought to the current time period, and the learner needs to try to get Trace back to the future. In the process, the learner needs to use the appropriate English skills, and there's politeness included in this as well. Students could do this alone, but the real power of a game like this comes from groups collaborating together so that they can work together to try to help get Trace to where he needs to be. And really, with any environment like this, we're looking at how a student brings their curiosity, their motivation, in addition to all their other learning characteristics. And the teacher plays a crucial role, because if you've watched young people with technology, anyone with technology, it's easy to not think in a really critical way. So students need our guidance to think critically about the choices that they make. And then there's this engaging space, whatever. It could be a digital game, but it could be anything with technology. And that engaging space is really where the power is. And then that leads us, to language learning and use, where you have real communication. Students are building their real communication. Another thing we're using is, maybe you've heard of the game Minecraft. This is a picture from Minecraft. It's popular in the US. It's kind of like Legos, but virtual Legos. So within our writing classes, we saw that students would benefit from having more of a shared context for their learning. That it seemed like when they were writing papers, they were all approaching things from too much of a different angle. We wanted them to have a shared context, a shared experience, and all of their writing could come from that experience. So Jeff Kuhn is a teacher in my program and does a great job with this stuff. And so he developed this course for the freshman composition, where students are working in teams, and they're working within Minecraft, so they go in there and play sometimes. And the topic that he put in there last semester, because it was Halloween in the US, was zombies. So the students could read about zombies, and then they were writing about zombies. They had zombie attacks. There's actually quite a bit of material on zombies out there. And so it was easy to find a lot of real material. And all of their assignments then related to that shared context. And what we have found is that students are much more motivated to come to class. They're collaborating together. We did have to tweak the course a couple times to make sure that it had that collaboration and not that competition. Many of these things, if you try it the first time and you're not as happy with it, think about the things you want to change for next time. Like the keynote said this morning, that you have to really think about your own practice and what works and what doesn't for teacher research, and try it again. So by now we've seen that an important component to games like this is when the learners are working together and they can gain or lose points together. That's really been a helpful feature of this one, so that they're encouraged to work together so that they can get more points. They like points. So this is actually a little video here of Jeff Kuhn, and he's going to be talking about our work with immersive technology. This is another one of the trends that is coming up. Immersive technology immersive technology that we're using inside our university. So I'll let him explain it briefly here.
We can do a reading about Times Square and then discuss it, or we could do the reading and then go to Times Square and talk about it. And it's much more of a rich use of the language. The idea is we're just moving them from talking about a place kind of in an abstract way to a contextualized, we're in that place. The way technology is shifting is we're getting rid of any sort of touch interface. The idea of computers are just going to be something we can interact with in a gesture-controlled, eye-tracking way.
Okay, so you can see that what we have here in our building, and I think, I'm seeing more and more of these places have this kind of thing here and there, is we have a space that projects across this kind of, so it looks like a 3D dimensional projection space. When students are in there, we're calling it the hollow deck. Students feel immersed within the technology. We're also using more and more gesture-based, as you saw Jeff demonstrate, technologies in the classroom. So there's becoming less and less of a barrier between people and technology. So you can continue to look for that in the future. Okay, so then the final idea here is that, a lot of course management systems, for instance, we use Blackboard at the university. Moodle is another one that we use and a lot of places use. A lot of these are great places to find and access information if you want your students to see the links that you have provided. But as you use technology, you're going to have to find a place to kind of keep it all together so students don't get confused on where they should go. One that I'm excited about is something called 3D Game Lab. And what they do is instead of simply, it's a lot more interactive as a course management system. Instead of just being kind of static folders and links, they ask students to go on quests instead of assignments. Students get points. They can see their points accumulate like you would for a video game. If they don't perform sufficiently well on a quest, the teacher can bounce it back to them and ask them to redo the quest or do a new one or something like that. So we're having a lot of success at our university with things like 3D Game Lab as well. So those are the 10 guidelines, ranging from thinking about your own evolving pedagogical practices, thinking about helping your students collaborate in different ways, harnessing their motivation, helping them with reflection, utilizing student input whenever possible, also training learners, making sure that students know how to navigate that kind of tense space where they're autonomous language learners, but they're working within a collaborative environment as well with technology. If you can, using real-world projects to get that student motivation up, and providing clear expectations while maintaining flexibility with how you use technology, looking at different ways to assess students and their language use, and finally, preparing students for these possibilities with technology and learning, which we don't even know, are in place yet. This is the URL I mentioned at the bottom here, so maybe you want to take a picture of that. It's a little long. That's where you can find this slide program, this PowerPoint here, if you're looking for that as well. And I think we are ready then for questions.
Thank you very much. Hello? The microphone. Can you hear me? Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And does anybody have any questions? If they'd like to raise their hand, I think there's some microphones wandering around the room. Any questions? Actually, it's hard to see with the lights on. You wave your hand. There's a gentleman down here. So can we have a microphone down here, please? I have a microphone.
Hello, everybody. It was fantastic. Ma'am, just I want to know, many of the sites, many of the things were online. So can we have some offline things that can be used in a remote areas in Maharashtra? Any offline things?
Okay.
Thank you.
So some options if you don't have online in the classroom, what you can
Yeah,
do
that's
offline.
true.
Yeah. Okay, so of course it depends on the context of what you're looking for. Many of the things that you can do, you could prepare online somewhere else and then bring into the classroom and just use when you don't have access to the internet. A couple ideas off the top of my head. If you can certainly, one activity that I find is very powerful for getting students to think in a creative and reflective way about the choices that they make and use English. It's not a high-tech activity, but students like it, is to give students a number of pictures, for instance, and the pictures can be in any random order, and then ask students to work as a group, and whatever your topic is, ask them to put the pictures in an order that makes sense to them. So one of the workshops I was giving here in the country, I asked the teachers to think about writing a cover letter, okay? And what different steps of the cover letter writing process might these pictures represent, and ask them to put the pictures in some kind of order and then share with the different groups. lost it. Is this back? Share with the different groups the orders they chose for the pictures and why they chose those orders, and then, you know, the order of the pictures, and then I could share my order. I purposefully included pictures that could be put in a whole variety of different types of order so that this would get their conversation going. And it was interesting to see the way they interpreted the pictures differently, you know? I mean, that's one of the great things with technology now. We can have different interpretations, and a lot of times that's fine, and students should be encouraged. So that's one type of activity. The game, I don't know what your context is, but the game Trace Effects can also be accessed without going online. If you go to the booth for the US State Department Relo, you can get a CD of that game as well. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any more questions? Anybody hand? So, lady over there.
Thank you very much for sharing the learning resources. I have only one question. The plagiarism tracker site that you shared, is it a paid or free site?
Sorry, I keep moving close. The resources I shared are free. Everything's free. If you go to that website that was on that slide, I put together, because I get this question so often, so I've put together a list of resources ranging from free to ones that a student or an institution would need to pay for, where students can go. So there's a whole list on there of different ones that students can go to and check their own writing. But those that I put up there are free. The one DocCop, which I put up there, I like particularly well, because it allows a student to upload their paper that they wrote and also upload up to 6 other sources that they used, so making a PDF of the source and then uploading that as well to check their actual sources against the paper they wrote for plagiarism. So I recommend that one.
Okay, thank you. Another question? Gentleman here.
Hello, it was a nice class, and just a question, is there any space for controlling the size of a text in a Wordle, in a word cloud? Is there any space for controlling the size of the text?
Yeah, when you go to these word cloud generator sites, they're very easy to operate, but you can see that when you finish making your word cloud, you can decide the sizes of things and the colors of things and the way they're put on the page and stuff like that. So you can control those.
It's not allowed in Wordle.com.
Wordle.net.
Yeah,
Yeah, so try a few of the different ones. Try some other ones out, and then you can just take a screenshot or download the picture that it creates.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any more questions? So, somebody over here. Thank you.
I was wondering what could be the possible downsides of digital learning? So while all this is great, what are the things that a teacher needs to be wary of?
Yeah, that's a great question. Speaking specifically about collaborative use of technology and talking about technologies that allow for more interaction, I would say that, as I've tried to kind of make clear here, that it is possible for students to first start a project and not succeed. This is new for students and it's new for teachers. So understanding, taking baby steps, understanding and telling students, we're going to try this together, we're going to do this kind of project, here's what I would like to see out of it, but to know what you're looking for in terms of what might not work with your students. So think ahead to your students and identify what are some of the things that they might have challenges with. And it's not just the technology, right? It's also users using of the technology. So the technology might work just fine, but the question is the learner using the technology in the way that you want them to? So there is a tendency sometimes for students just to sit in front of a piece of technology and just kind of stare at it and not do anything. Okay, that's possible, but that doesn't mean you can't train them to do differently. So walking through things with students, having them do as much as possible in class, I think is really key.
Okay, thank you. There's a question over there at the back.
Yes, hello, ma'am.
One here, and then there's a gentleman at the back next. Okay, right.
Okay,
Thank
can I continue?
Yes, please do.
Yes, I have a question. When I learned English as a second language in my school, I had to learn the spellings of words from a good dictionary. But do you think nowadays technology can help learners to learn the spelling, or does it do opposite?
Okay, well, yeah, spelling is always, I mean, for American kids too, right? Spelling is tricky with English. In terms of can technology help? Absolutely, technology can help. If you're looking for a program that's a good one to focus on spelling, so this is not, it can be collaborative at the same time, is something called Quizlet.com, if you know Quizlet.com, so Quizlet.com. You can go to Quizlet, and you as a teacher, for instance, can create a stack of word cards. If you think of index cards where you would write your word on one side and flip it over, and on the other side put a definition. So the teacher can create a stack of cards, basically the spelling words that you might want your class to work on, along with definitions. And then you can share that stack of cards that you've created with your learners as well. So everybody can have access to it. And then one of the features within Quizlet is a speller. So the computer will speak the word, and then the student has to type it in, and they can get it wrong or right. Now, so I find, a lot of learners, even my own kids, really like that. And there's other games they can play with the words as well. You might say, maybe your concern is that the computer will recognize a word and fix it for you automatically, and maybe that's a problem. I look at that as a great opportunity, especially for people who aren't great spellers. So if they can get the word kind of close, and then the computer can help them fix it, I'm okay with that. I think, but students need to be taught to double check really carefully that the computer corrected their word the way they really wanted it to be spelled. So again, it comes to the teacher. If you're concerned about that with your students, give your students a list of words that are, maybe spelled incorrectly and then within a sentence, and the computer fixed it for the user, and let them see if they agree with that spelling that was offered. Because there's a million cases now where the computer suggests a correct spelling, but it's a totally different word that's either funny or makes no sense or inappropriate. So train your students how to use the technology is my recommendation.
Great, thanks. Gentleman over there.
Congratulations, Professor Bikowski. It was a great presentation that we watched. Now, my question is, what different technologies did you merge in making your presentation?
Different technologies did I merge in making my presentation? All right, well, let's see. We've got some video clips, which I took from, I downloaded. So let's see now. To get the video clips, I had to use something to download them from our university website. That video was loaded online if you want to find it. So and then I had to use a different technology to shrink it down to the size that I wanted to focus on. And then, of course, everything was built within PowerPoint, so I just put everything in PowerPoint. A lot of screen captures and put those all in there as well, in addition to a couple other ones where I modified some images and things like that. So yeah, I guess, that's the thing is the more we're comfortable with technologies, the more it becomes the water you swim in. And you can start to do things without thinking a whole lot about it. And we really want our students to be in a place where they can do all kinds of things with technology. Many students all across the world only look at technology, for instance, like for social networking or playing games. They don't think about the other ways they can use technology in their lives.
Great. Should we have one last question? There was a lady here who had her hand up before.
Thanks for a wonderful presentation. My question is about plagiarism. When you say that the student output is also put up along with the source list, how does the software or the site actually say, because kids will also use a lot of similar keywords in their text. So how does it differentiate that this has been taken or not taken? That would help.
So these are just basic, and I think these online plagiarism checkers have made considerable progress in the 5 years I've looked at them. So I assume they'll get better. But right now, really, it's just a text match. They're just looking for text matching. So you take a piece of writing and you put it into a box, or you can upload it into the system. It depends on free, not free, all kinds of things. But the computer has access, and then the computer program basically is going to check for matches of strings of text. And that could be across the internet, at large. If you start to pay for things, then you get the user gets access to specific databases. So in the U.S., a lot of universities pay for these services so they can have access to the databases that students might be using for their sources. And so whatever the pool is, the plagiarism checker is just looking for strings of matching words. And when it finds a string of matching words, it simply tells the user, this is a string of matching words, you better check it. Many times, it's a string of matching words that anybody can say, and it doesn't indicate plagiarism. So teacher feedback, teacher guidance is really important. Students might totally freak out and say, oh my gosh, my paper is full of plagiarism, when really there's no plagiarism in the paper. They just copied 5 words, which anybody could say. So it takes a lot of teacher guidance on that.